Hello and happy week 12, everyone in NFL land. This is Doug Farrar of Touchdown Wire on the USA Today Sports Media Group. And the guy over there with the strong sweater game today is the great Greg Cosell of NFL Films and ESPN's NFL Matchup. And Greg, is that like a Christmas? Are you like warming up for your Christmas sweater time or what's going on there?
I don't think so. It just happens to be kind of a nice sweater that I decided to wear today.
Very nice sweater.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the holidays, we have some nice Thanksgiving games coming up. Oh my gosh. So we're all watching tape frantically trying to catch up here. Let's start with 49ers at Seahawks. And you and I had a discussion this morning about Brock Purdy. And I want to mention a few stats. Through 11 weeks, Brock Purdy is number one in quarterback rating, QBR, completion percentage, touchdown percentage, passing success rate, yards per attempt, adjusted yards per attempt, yards per completion, net yards per attempt, adjusted net yards per passing attempt, passer rating under pressure, completion percentage under pressure, and yards per attempt under pressure. So, of course, Greg, he's just a system quarterback who only throws the wide-ass open stuff that Kyle Shanahan prepares for him.
You know, I guess the way this leads to, in some ways, a larger discussion about quarterbacks, which is always the way I think we like to go.
Yeah.
I mean, the argument about Purdy has become pointless. The guy's a very good player. But when a quarterback, what is the job of the quarterback essentially? I mean, there's many jobs, but we're paring it down here. His job is to execute the system that he's being taught at a high level. That's the job. No coach rolls the ball out and says, let's just run around today and see what happens. And that's what we're going to do this Sunday. We're just going to roll the ball out and see what happens. We're not going to play with any structure or system. That doesn't happen. So Brock Purdy executes the system he's being asked to execute at a really high level. Mm-hmm. To me, that is high-level quarterback play. And so in some ways, I don't understand the conversation about this. I mean, I do. I'm not naive, and I've been doing this a long time. It's because he doesn't have a power arm. It's because while he's a good athlete, he's not the best athlete. It's because he's not physically imposing, when you just look at him. So there's all these things which we all fall into those categories at times, Doug. I think we would both agree there are times we all do that. Sure. But when all's said and done, he is being taught a system of football by his head coach. His job is to go out and execute it snap after snap after snap at the highest level possible. He's done that pretty much since he's become the starting quarterback.
Yes.
And if you look at the totality of his work, it's always easy to pick out a play or two, a negative play. That's easy to do. And when he threw a few late game interceptions a few weeks ago, you started to get, aha, he really isn't any good. That you have to look at the totality of the work.
Right. Well, I remember the Giants in the Rams game. I think it was weeks 2 and 3. He was pretty random. Like, what's going on? Spitting the ball all over the place, but he's recovered. And I want to bring up one play because I think the worry about Purdy is, well, what can he do in the playoffs? Like, can he transcend the system, so to speak? You'll remember the 21-yard sideline throw to Brandon Ayuk, who, by the way, is amazing. Oh, my God.
Are we talking about this week or last week?
Week 10, it was against the Jaguars. 21-yard sideline throw to Ayuk against the Jags in week 10, where it looked like Ayuk was his third read. Purdy hung in the pocket, made an accurate throw over two converging defenders, Darius Williams and Trey Herndon. Don't tell me that's not a system quarterback.
No, I can tell you all about that play. First of all, that was his 21st drop back of the game, okay? Mm-hmm. As I said, I broke down the play on the NFL Matchup show, so I know it. That was his 21st throw of the game. On 17 of the previous 20 dropbacks, the Jaguars played single high safety coverage. So they called a play based on the fact that they were more than likely, percentage-wise, probability-wise, tendency-wise, to get single high. They actually called flood to the I believe it's to the boundary side of the field, if I'm not mistaken. They called flood to the boundary side of the field. Well, that got taken away because what the Jaguars did is they did disguise and late rotation, and they went to cover 2.
Yep, flipped to cover 2.
So flood was not going to work because ultimately Samuel, who was going to be the intermediate guy in the flood, which would work perfectly versus cover 3 because he'd run into a void, there were two defenders that totally muddied the look for Purdy. And he actually looked right down the middle first because the coverage changed late. It was late rotation. And then he realized, and this is all within the timing and structure of the play. Remember, this is all happening in a second or a second and a half. He's not sitting with a clicker like I have and watching it 10 times and saying, okay, now where should I go with the ball?
He's not typing in Google Docs like I do.
Right,
No?
right. So,
Okay.
so he immediately realized, okay, it's cover two. And now what's my throw in cover two? It's to the outside void, which is a void in cover two, but it's all the way to the other side of the field. So it became a far hash, deep sideline throw, which is a hard throw to make, particularly when you were not anticipating as you're taking the snap that's the throw that you were going to have to make. So that was really high level quarterbacking by Purdy.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the timing of the down, but the timing of the throw and the timing of the converging Williams and Herndon. I mean, if he throws that a hair later, it's picked. It might be a pick six. He has to throw it right then. So
right, and that's my point, is that all that had to happen within the timing and structure of the play design. So, he only has it happens really fast, and sometimes I don't think people realize how fast those things happen.
Yeah, Seahawks, we don't know about Geno Smith. Might be a game day decision. I also wanted to mention, again, Brandon Ayuk. He had a 37-yard catch against the Buccaneers where he looked like he was running a rail route, and he cut inside on a dime, and he put Carlton Davis in the dryer. And then the 76-yard touchdown.
Oh, I thought that was also one of Purdy's best throws of the season.
Yes.
Because I froze it right when Purdy separated his hands from the ball.
Yep.
And if you see where Ayuk hadn't even started his break yet. So that was another big time timing anticipation throw. And by the way, when you make that kind of throw, to be able to put the ball right on the receiver's hands is hard because he hasn't even started his break yet. So the ball location was phenomenal.
You have to have that timing and, sync up with your receivers, which when we get to the Chiefs, we're going to talk about the inverse thing. And then the 76-yard touchdown where he just outran. Jamel Dean was pressing on him. And by step three, Ayuk had him.
Yeah, it was a slot fade.
Yeah, slot fade. And he's officially become one of those receivers all caps do not want to press. So I just, we talk about Kittle and Samuel and McCaffrey, obviously, and they're all great players. But Ayuk, you got to watch out for that guy.
It's funny. I remember watching the draft. I was home that year watching the draft, and I do all my college work, obviously, and I had done IU coming out of ASU, and I really liked him. And he ran a ton of in-breaking routes at ASU and had a ton of run after catch because he's that kind of receiver. And I remember, if I'm not mistaken, the 49ers traded up to get him. And I remember just sitting at home thinking, boy, that's a really good pick for the Niners. And, this was right when they drafted him, just because I had seen, a ton of his college tape. And it certainly turned out to be that way because he catches a ton of in-breakers and he's really good run after catch, which is exactly what fits what they do.
Yep, no question. So that offense is Seattle's defense has been iffy, we'll say the least, but they got a challenge.
Although I think they've improved. I mean, I think that they've gotten better. Certain guys have started to play well. Mafi has been a really, his second year, he's really improved significantly, I think.
Yes. I would. Well, and people have said this for years about edge rushers in their second year. It's like they sort of get used to what tackles do to them and they flip it. I think it's happened.
Yeah, and
Witherspoon is just tremendous.
Yeah, he's a good player. Although he did have his welcome to the NFL moment a few weeks ago against Baltimore when Mr. Edwards ran him over, but that happens to everybody.
That happens to everybody. So Packers at Lions. I don't think we've discussed Jordan Love all season, but I want to.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance this week, but I've seen pretty much every game until this week. So I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
I'll bring up quickly 2 plays against the Chargers, and yes, it's the Chargers, and that defense is bad. 29-yard completion to Dontavian Wicks with 11:29 left in the first half. He had 2nd and 15, pressured by Tui Pelotu to his backside. He's got Jaden Reed in the left flat out of motion, but he doesn't take the quick thing. He moves to his left out of pressure. This was pocket movement, efficient pocket movement. Throws the in-cut to Wicks out of dagger with Tucker Kraft running the vert, and he makes that throw at defensive tackle Otio Ogboyana right in his face.
All right, I'm going to, believe it or not, because I can do this, I'm going to look at that play right now. So,
okay.
When did it occur in the game?
We're live, folks. 11:29 left in the first half.
11:29 left in the first half. Wicks 29 yards on 2nd and 15.
Yep.
All right, I'm looking at it right now.
So
So
watch
if I
how.
look away, people can understand that I'm
Yeah.
actually looking at my big TV on the wall
So
here. So that's why
45, Tui Pelotu, the left edge.
that's why I'm looking away. So it's not because
Yeah. So
all
comes
right.
in pressure.
Second and
Jaden Reed's in
15,
the left flat out of motion.
2x2, orbit, reverse motion, play fake. So he moves. There was no throw within not moving. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it ends up being wide open, but he's running to his left and
Yeah.
he sees it.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was open because it was the Chargers, but I'm just saying.
Well, they're playing cover 2.
Right.
And see, the thing about cover 2 is this. I learned this from Rod Rust years and years ago when he used to sit with me. He said that zone coverages, and he said, and cover 2 in particular, those coverages are built for 1.5, for, let's put it this way, 3-step drop timing and 5-step drop timing. Anything that goes beyond that, the pass rush has to get there because the coverage cannot hold up. It's not meant to hold up. So obviously when Love leaves the pocket, as he did here, and runs out to his left, and I didn't time it, but I'm sure it was at least 4 or 5 seconds before he delivered the football.
It wasn't a
The,
quick throw.
the coverage is not going to hold up. So, and I know, you would, we know the Chargers are the worst pass defense in the NFL, and that's what the stats say. And obviously, if you watch the tape, it's on merit. But no cover 2 would hold up in that situation. It's just, I mean, he's throwing the ball at 5 seconds. The voids become bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yep. I think I'm looking more at his processing and not bailing and moving in the pocket.
Right.
And yes, it's wide open. I get it. But I like the.
But sometimes that happens. I mean, we've seen that with quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes through the years. When he moves, all of a sudden guys are wide open. That sometimes is what happens.
I would say I like the advancement of process in his case, to put it that way.
Did you have another play from that game?
I had the touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs, the game winner, backdoor fade in which he exploited.
No, that was good ball. I
I
remember seeing that live.
Yeah, it looked to be busted quarters. Threw a nice ball.
I'm going to pull that one up too. So he's an empty here.
Yeah, and the I don't know what the hell.
Oh, they got screwed up here.
Yeah, they really did.
Well, they got caught because it's no huddle.
Yeah,
they got caught.
Oops. But he threw a nice ball.
Yeah, he threw a nice ball.
I kind of like the way he's trending. It's just
I do too. By the way, it's funny. I've watched every game except this one, obviously, which I will get to. But I just haven't seen all the plays as we're speaking now.
Right.
And I think you see flashes that say this guy can be a good player. I think he needs to tighten up some of his mechanics. He can be a little loose with his mechanics, with his footwork. His ball carriage, he tends to drop it, move it around a little too much, which can impact negatively your ball location. But he also makes some throws with great timing, great anticipation. He certainly has, I wouldn't say he has tier 1 ability, but he certainly has a really good arm and he has good movement. So, he's in that tier 2, when we talk about traits. Now, it's not just traits. Obviously, there's a mental part of the game as well, and he's working through that. It's his first year as a starter. I don't think people realize that, just because he's been in the league 3 years, until you play every single week, go through games where you make good plays, bad plays. Maybe you're the reason that your team loses a game, and then you've got to come back into the building on Monday and then be at practice on. I remember Ron Jaworski talking to me about this all the time, that you find out about your quarterback, not when you win, but when you lose and he has a bad game. Because everybody's eyes in the building, not just the teammates, but in the building, are looking at him. And that's when you find out about your quarterback. And Jaws used to talk to me about that all the time. And you've got to go through that. You can't go through that when you're not playing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jaws did most with the Rams and the Eagles. He did.
Right.
Do you just
but my point is, just because he's been there 3 years, people think, oh well, he's not really a rookie. Yeah, he is a rookie when it comes to those kinds of things.
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Thank you, Mike Tyson. So Goff's 3 interceptions Jared Goff 3 interceptions against the Bears. The first one, I mean, that Goff thought he had Sam Laporta on the outside slant. Laporta collided with Jaquan Brisker, so the thing just got messed up.
Yeah, that one wasn't on him.
But the last two, to TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, kind of walked me through that, because it seemed to be situations where Goff didn't really have the measure of the backers and intermediate coverage, and he looked as if he was throwing off time to some bad places.
Yeah, I can look at those too, so I will.
I'm not sure if this is an overall issue that will plague him long term. I had not seen it before, but
So we're
in
talking about the last two
the
interceptions, right?
TJ Edwards and Troy, the two to the linebackers. The first one was just a screwed up. It happens, and that was not on
So
him.
we want the one to Edmonds, right?
Edwards and Edmonds.
Okay, which one happened first?
I don't
Edwards
know.
happened first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I'll look at that too.
So again, it's like I'm not sure what we're looking at here.
All right. So let's walk through this too. I know the audience can't. Well, maybe you'll be able to put the play up. But
Yeah,
the point is he initially sees split safety, because don't forget, quarterbacks are not looking at 11 defenders. It's not humanly possible. They're taught that, hey, is middle field open, middle field closed, and what's my blitz alerts? That's the general way quarterbacks are taught. Now there's a little more, obviously, but they're not being asked to watch 10 guys. You can't do that.
right.
So he sees middle open right now, but
Mhm.
what's going to happen is it's going to change, okay?
They
It's
cover.
essentially going to change as he takes the snap. So he's got to recognize all this, just like we spoke a little bit ago about Brock Purdy recognizing it. So
Yep.
now he looks out to his right, and he doesn't feel comfortable making that throw to, I think that's actually Brock Wright. So he doesn't feel comfortable making that throw. So he comes back into basically, see, I understand exactly what he thought was going to happen. And again, it didn't happen, so it's on him. But here's what he thought was going to happen. When he comes back, he sees Edmonds jump. God, it's Malcolm Rodriguez, the linebacker. What is he, a fullback now? Which he's been used that way, by the way. So
Yeah.
he sees him jump that, and he thinks he has the high-low, and he's going to throw the ball to
I
I
think it
think
was
that's Peoples-Jones.
Peoples Jones was the target. Yeah.
Yeah, he's thrown it to Peoples-Jones, and
Yeah.
he did not account at all for Edwards, who came from the other side. You can't throw in the middle of the field like that. You have to account for the backside player, because
Right.
when you're late in the middle, the backside linebacker or the backside underneath defender becomes in play, and he did not account for that. So that's on him.
Yeah.
So then the Edmonds one,
They
um,
were. They didn't flip anything. This is cover 3.
let's see. So again, he's looking at split safety. It could be anything. It becomes cover 3.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is bad.
Yeah. It's
This one, in all honesty, and I'm not going to get this opportunity, but this is one where I'd have to say to him, what did you see? Because I don't know
yeah.
what he saw, because it's just too muddied. There was no way to get the ball to who he was throwing it to. So that's one, as a coach, you say, hey, Jared, what did you see? And
Yeah.
you let him tell you what he saw, because he obviously didn't see it correctly.
Yeah. And it's not like emblematic of something bigger. I saw
No.
when he throws 3 interceptions. I'm like, huh? And we'll talk about C.J. Stroud's 3 interceptions later.
By the way, I didn't think that they were terrible interceptions. I like the kind where you go, oh my God, there's a big problem here.
No, I don't think. Well, the we're going to talk about a cornerback for the Arizona Cardinals who had the game of his life. We'll get into that in a minute. Raiders at Chiefs, and we're not talking about the Raiders. Obviously, we're taping this the morning after the Monday night game. There have been 2 times before we get into the offense. We had a lot to deal with there. I wanted to go back to what we talked about with Steve Spagnuolo's Chiefs defense last week. There have been 2 times this season, Greg, where the Eagles' offensive line has been handled, like dominated. It's not a usual occurrence. It was the Jets, and it was this game. Chiefs defense, as we discussed last week, is how they will adjust their lines and their coverages in sync to mess with offenses pre and post snap. It's a really cool thing to watch, because it's so easy when you're messing with that much stuff to just like lose control of everything. If you wonder why Jalen Hurts threw 453 screens in the second half, well, here's why. He was sacked 5 times in the first half, and Spags had a great wrinkle. Eli Manning actually mentioned it on the Manning cast. They would throw a late DB blitz from the front side and drop a defensive lineman into coverage on the other side. The blitzer was McDuffie, and the dropper was Mike Dana on all 3.
Yeah, see, to me, that's not a wrinkle. I think that, and again, no knock on Eli Manning, but I mean, I've watched the Chiefs, every year, and I've certainly studied Steve Spagnuolo's defense, and I think, and I even made this note that I don't think there's another defensive coordinator in the league who uses his defensive backs as effectively as blitzers as Spagnuolo. That's not something new.
Oh
Now
no, I mean
maybe
they had L'Jarius Sneed blowing people up as a slot blitzer for a couple of
yeah, and
games.
he's no longer a slot player, so he's
Couldn't
not the
do it.
guy that blitzes right
So
now.
he's outside, but
But
he used to do that.
but
Yeah.
McDuffie is really, really good. I mean, that's that. Here's exactly what I typed. It's funny that we're mentioning this. I said Chief DC Spagnuolo, one of the best in the NFL, deploying defensive backs as blitzers. At times they are part of 5-man pressures, and other times they are fourth rushers in zone exchange pressure schemes. He's really, really good at that. I mean, they
Yeah.
had a sack, which I'm actually going to do this week in the matchup show. In the game against Miami when they were overseas, it was the first third down of the game, and Jalen Watson got a sack. He was a free hitter at Tua Tagovailoa, and that was a 5-man pressure that was beautifully executed. But he's really, really good. And one thing you see that he often pairs with an edge blitz by a defensive back is a TE stunt to the same side, which
Yes.
softens the edge. And
Yep.
so it's really well designed and well done. And he did that against the Eagles as well.
Yeah. Well, the second sack, Chris Jones, was another cool thing they had. And you mentioned Leo Chenal as sort of a hybrid,
Yeah.
two-level guy.
Well, he was a pass rusher in college at Wisconsin.
Right. So the second sack, they had a bare front look pre-snap, and they moved to a 4-man pressure with Chenal dropping to off ball. 7-man drop in cover 6. Hurts had Devontae Smith open in the left slot. Didn't happen. Just diabolical stuff. And then they sort of.
So which sack are you referring to?
That was the second one, Chris Jones.
So this was this a who got the sack here?
It was Jones.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the ones better later in the first half where McDuffie had the sack, forced fumble, and then the Karlaftis sack. I remember that.
So, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I just wanted to mention Spagnuolo's defense. I mean, that it's probably the most fun defense to watch in the NFL.
Oh, it's great. It's phenomenal.
Okay, on to the offense, Greg. We are past the whole, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid, they'll figure it out. We're not worried because a lot of the same stuff we discussed before the bye is still there. Drops can be considered random, but the Chiefs lead the NFL with 26 receiver drops, and their 9% drop rate is the highest for any team in the NFL over the last 10 seasons per Stats and Info. So it's about more than that. Before I get into the concepts, you mentioned this morning when we talked that Mahomes is not playing well, and I want to step back and let you just roll with that.
Yeah, I don't think he's played particularly well all season long, and I don't think he's a comfortable quarterback. We've gotten used to the fact that every week he's going to make special outside of structure plays. He's done them so many times in his career to be the great, great player that he's become that we just assume that that's always going to happen. They've not really happened anywhere near as much this year because even though teams coach movement, in other words, if the quarterback moves, they have scramble rules with the receivers. That is coached. There's still a random element to movement, as you know, Doug. So just because a quarterback moves doesn't automatically mean the play will end up being a positive. I don't think he's particularly comfortable right now. He's always moved at times prematurely. That in many ways has been part of his game. And when I say prematurely, I mean where there's no real pressure. But now his movement, to me anyway, watching the tape, just seems more random and less calculated. He's leaving too many throws on the field that are there. And, at some point that becomes a problem. Now, I will say this. I don't think he trusts his protection because they have an issue now. They have an issue with their tackles. There were numerous plays in this game where they had to keep Kelsey in to chip, and he's then not a primary route runner in the route concept, and that's a problem.
Left tackle Donovan Smith and right tackle Jawan Taylor, for people who don't know, and Taylor against the Eagles was getting his lunch.
But they've struggled all year. I think, again, I'm not in his head, but I can tell you from speaking to quarterbacks through the years that when they don't trust the protection, they play differently because they're anticipating that they're going to get pressure. So they do tend to leave earlier. It's not an excuse. I mean, a coach would tell you, hey, you can't worry about that. But they're human beings too. But overall, Mahomes is missing way too many throws that I don't think we've seen him miss those kinds of throws. like I said, I mean, there was a great example in this game, and I made a note of it. And um, I'm trying. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe I can't. Oh, he had a dig late in the third quarter. It was 1st and 10 late in the third quarter. Sky Moore was wide open on a dig route, and Mahomes did not turn it loose. Now, some might say, well, Carter Power versus left guard Thuney, that was but that happened later. The ball should have been gone. And
Right.
I don't know why he didn't throw it. Moore was so wide open. Only Mahomes can tell you why he didn't throw it. And then there's other times where he's just, he's just missing throws. I mean, he had a very poor vertical throw to Valdez Scantling, and we know he can't catch the ball very well. And we know that he had a really bad drop that could have won the game for them, but that's not really relevant. If the receiver's open, you got to throw it. He had a poor vertical throw to Valdez Scantling, who had easily beaten Blankenship on a sail route, in the third quarter, and he badly missed it.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that from Mahomes. He's just not a comfortable player right now.
I would agree with that, and I'm not making excuses for Mahomes either. So let's leave that where it is. I don't disagree at all. You mentioned flood as a primary Chiefs route concept in previous years, and we discussed it this morning.
You haven't seen it much in recent weeks.
Well, it's a little bit, but here's what I wrote. I don't see a lot of complementary concepts to scheme guys open. It doesn't help at all if the spacing and timing of those routes seems off. I remember, I always bring this up. The first year that Tom Brady was in Tampa Bay, first half of the first season before the bye, when they were just getting waxed and he was over Scotty Miller by like 20 yards. And this is the greatest quarterback of all time. Duh. And he wasn't on the same page with his receiver. So I think that's part of it. This isn't an integrated passing game right now. The connections aren't consistent. I think this is one reason Mahomes has regressed to sort of hero ball and missing stuff. The deep stuff right now seems more like, hey, let's get everyone running in straight lines and see who Patrick can hit. And another thing I noticed against the Eagles, there are a lot of times, perhaps to a disproportionate amount, where every target is running to about the same point in the field from a vertical perspective. I just don't see a lot of, and when we get to the Bills and what Joe Brady did a little bit differently, I'll bring this up again. But, I'm not pillaring Matt Nagy or Andy Reid, but I'm just saying, I'm saying what I see. Like you say, it's a discussion based on tape.
But I will say this too, going back to their O tackle's inability to pass protect, because you know what that does? Not only does it force Kelsey to be a chipper at times, but it limits your formations.
Yes.
And that's a big problem. So, I think they have to work a bunch of things out. There's no question that this season they've really been driven by their defense, not by their offense.
Oh yeah, that's. I don't know how playoff conversant they'd be without that defense playing the way it is. But yeah, you mentioned also this morning the Eagles defense, how much cover zero they played.
6 snaps, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and that Byard interception, Howie, you did it again. I always like Byard, and I like that play.
Yeah, see, now that was a really bad throw by Mahomes. That should have been an easy touchdown.
It was late.
I mean, he should have taken him further across the end zone. He threw it to where he was as opposed to where he was going, and that allowed Byard to recover and make the interception.
Yeah, so a lot there. Speaking of the Eagles, Bills at Eagles, Bills offense, and everyone says more motion. I found this interesting. In this game, there were 15 Bills Jets. There were 15 examples of either shift or motion. Josh Allen completed all 15 passes, 3 explosive plays, all 3 of his touchdowns. In the previous 10 games, Josh Allen had thrown 150 passes with motion. So the per game average was exactly the same, 15. So here's Allen's completion to Dalton Kincaid with 2:18 left in the first quarter. They ran jet motion with Diggs. Linebacker C.J. Mosley ran with Diggs. Linebacker Quincy Williams stayed to spy Allen. That left the middle of the field open for Kincaid's simple stop route up the middle. It wasn't some massive schematic innovation, but it was an example of setting up a defense for a favorable look for your quarterback. Allen had 9 completions over the middle against the Jets by around the seams or inside the seams, and that included the 81-yard touchdown pass to Khalil Shakir. So it wasn't like huge differences, which you can't do in a week, but I did see some different things.
Yeah, I mean, again, you had the numbers, but it seemed watching the tape that motion was used more extensively. Now, again, It could be the kind of motion, but
and here's the other thing I wanted to bring up, sorry to interject. it's not like, as you like to say, we roll out of bed. That if you can't just say, hey, we're going to put motion in and we're going to be the 89 49ers. There has to be a meaning to your motion or your whatever. If you're no huddle, it has to have meaning. If you're in motion, it has to have meaning.
Well, I
And
think every team believes that when they do these things, it does have meaning. Some do it
well,
better than others.
yeah, but the point is, I mean, there's motion to indicate, there's motion to disrupt, and there's motion to define. I think there are three levels to it, and I think Brady did a better job of using motion to define things for Allen. Is my point.
Yes, and I think what you're trying. Look, Josh Allen, by his very nature, is not necessarily a true precision quarterback.
Hmm.
But you still have to work toward that. You
Yeah,
can't build your offense. We just spoke about Mahomes. You can't build your offense around the fact that your quarterback's going to make special plays every single week
right.
because, they don't happen every single week. So you need to build your offense around the execution of what you do within the structure of it.
Mhm.
Now, the Kincaid play you spoke about, when was that in the game?
That was 2:18 left in the first quarter.
I know it's 16 yards. Yeah, that was that's where they were in 6-0 line personnel. Diggs jet motion across the formation.
Yep.
Mosley expanded with him. Then the
Williams,
linebacker.
it looks like Williams was spying Allen, and that gave
Well,
Kincaid.
then Williams reacted to Murray crossing the formation opposite the motion.
Okay, okay, gotcha.
So the motion and the backfield action opened the throwing window for Allen on the sit route to Kincaid right in the middle. So what they did is they defined the read and the throw for Allen with the use of motion and backfield action. And those are the kinds of things you want to do to I hate to use this word because then people think it means the quarterback's not smart, but you're trying to simplify the reads. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that in a
Yep.
way of smart versus stupid. You're trying to look, every coach wants the primary read to be where the ball's thrown. That's the way pass games are structured. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a situation where that can happen. You
Mhm.
can do that at times through motion, through backfield actions, through formations. There's multiple ways to do it, but what you're trying to do is to simplify it for the quarterback so that the primary read is where he can deliver the football.
Yeah. I just thought, again, it's not revolutionary. It's not some like, oh my god,
No,
but
but
it was a good
nothing's
example.
really revolutionary, Doug, as you know.
Right. Yeah, you and I have written books about that, haven't we? So you on the Eagles, Greg, because you're an Eagles guy. Slade at the boundary, Bradbury Field. You've mentioned that Bradbury has some issues.
Yeah, well, I think that's one reason why in this game they basically made that change where they
Mhm.
made Slade the boundary corner and Bradbury the field corner, because prior to this they had played Bradbury at right corner, Slade at left corner. Uh,
So
last
they were not, they were stationary, now they're following, is what you're saying.
No, they're still stationary, just one's
Oh,
boundary, one's field.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, because the boundary corner is going to play a lot more man coverage because of the nature of coverage and the nature of what offenses do in terms of distribution and location of receivers, Mr. Farrar.
Ding
So
ding. That's my favorite Greg Cosell phrase.
yeah, so that's what they've done because Bradbury has struggled in coverage this year.
Yeah. Jaguars at Texans, an intriguing battle for domination of the AFC South, Greg. So
Yeah, I
Stroud,
know.
yeah, Stroud 3 interceptions. First one was to Cardinal safety Jalen Thompson. Go Cougs. Looked like the Cardinals were playing red too. Not sure what Stroud was looking for there. Nico Collins ran a slant run into Thompson's area. I don't know what.
Well, I know exactly what he was looking for, and he had it. He if you watch that play carefully, he took an extra beat to deliver the ball, and therefore was late,
Okay.
and that shortened the end zone. So he couldn't throw it beyond because it would have been out of the end zone. If he didn't take the extra beat to deliver the ball, he might have had to throw. So he had to leave the ball short, or he would have thrown it out of the end zone, which he
Okay.
could
So
have, I guess.
he
You know,
had
if
to
he
throw
felt
to that instead of into that. Okay, that
right,
makes.
right. But
Uh,
yeah, but he you could see if you watch that play that he starts to throw, pauses,
okay.
and then throws it. So he
Okay.
was a beat late with that throw.
Second one, I'd credit cornerback Antonio Hamilton of the Cardinals, who followed Robert Woods on that shallow cross, broke the pass up for linebacker Chris Barnes to catch it. And then third one, that was Hamilton again. He followed Tank Dell on the quick out and jumped it. So both,
Yeah, and that was a bad bit a ball location throw. He left
yeah,
that ball far too inside on
yep.
the outcut by Dell, and that allowed Hamilton to make the pick.
However, he's still him. The touchdown to Tank Dell, and we talked about this last week about how Stroud is one of those rare guys who does not need to stride into his throws to make stick throws downfield. He had a guy right in his face, and it was all upper body. And I'm like, yep, there he is.
Yeah, and the thing that's really been impressive about him, you rarely see this with rookie quarterbacks. He's been outstanding on third down this year. Um,
Yep.
and you rarely see that with rookie quarterbacks because, for the most part, defenses have the tactical advantage on third down, particularly if it's 3rd and 7+, because they can do a lot of things, and you're sort of a little reactive to that.
Mm-hmm.
But he has been truly outstanding on third down. And he's only been sacked 6 times on third down all season with 120 dropbacks, and that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, so I don't think those 3 picks, and he had 2 the whole season and then 3 in this
No,
game.
I don't think they're alarming by any
It's
means.
not like, oh God, because
No,
rookie quarterback, you think, oh, has the league figured him out? I don't think that's what this is.
And by the way, he's proven to be a pretty aggressive thrower, and
Yeah,
I think every once in a while those guys do throw picks. That's the nature of the NFL. Look, no one wants to throw picks, but I've always been a believer, and you know this, Doug, that you have to look at each interception as a separate entity. You can't look at a number on a page.
of course. Well, you're a basketball guy, so you'll like this. He was asked after the game if he was going to be any more conservative. He said, Steph doesn't stop shooting the threes. I'm going to be who I am. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to worry about it. I mean, look, Dan Orlovsky did a thing, getting back to Josh Allen, that I happened to see, where he literally went through every one of Josh Allen's interceptions this year. And there are 4 or 5 that are terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so, if it's 4 or 5 that are terrible, that happens. It's the NFL. But he went through all the others, and, they really are not bad. I mean, that's been so overblown.
Right.
But we won't get into that right now, because but I mean, you have to be careful about looking, not you, just people, about looking at a number on a page and saying, oh, that's too many. You've got to
no
see
box score scouting, people. Let that be your.
You've got to see them. You've got to see them.
Yeah. Final note on Jags Texans. Ted Wynn of The Athletic, who does great work, pointed this out. Jaguars are using Calvin Ridley more in the slot with stacks and motion stacks and some really interesting things. We haven't talked about the Jaguars in a while, so I just wanted to mention that. Ridley had a good game, but some highly intriguing matchups on Thanksgiving beyond. And Greg, as always, great stuff. We'll be DVRing NFL matchup in our tryptophan haze as always, and we'll be talking more X's and O's next week.
All right, Doug, appreciate it. Thanks.